Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Let's get started with our big focus this hour. External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar is all set to visit Russia on the 23rd of August and the 24th of August as India and Moscow look to further strengthen their wide-ranging bilateral partnership. Jaishankar will co-chair the 27th session of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission, Trade, Economic, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation. The two-day visit comes at a crucial time with both sides looking to expand economic and commercial engagement. Discussions are expected to focus on trade, logistics, connectivity, payment mechanisms, as well as cooperation in science, technology and other key sectors. Mainly Northern Sea Route, with India exploring greater Arctic cooperation and connectivity with the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. Joining us live at this point is Ambassador Bhashpati Mukherjee, former diplomat. We also have Madan Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joining us live. Georgie Toloroya, Professor of Russian Academy of Science, is joining us live from Moscow. Also with us is Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. He's live from Washington, D.C. with us. Let me make a start with you first, Ambassador Mukherjee. What do you expect from this visit by the Foreign Minister to Russia? What do you believe is going to be top of the agenda of S Jaishankar?
Well, Uday, EM is an old Russia hand. He speaks fluent Russian. It was his compulsory foreign language when he joined the Foreign Service 1 year after me. And he has an excellent rapport, not just with the Russian Foreign Minister, but across the line with the Russian leadership. He is one person who is widely respected within Russia, across political lines, because of his knowledge and because of the manner in which he has been able to steer the Indo-Russian relationship through all the challenges during Trump's presidency 2.0. This visit, where he will be co-chairing this session, will also involve, I presume, important consultations from the perspective of both countries on how to bring a satisfactory conclusion to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is now turning into a major global issue because it's impeding the development, global development. It's also causing a huge amount of stress as far as the redevelopment of the global economy is concerned. Secondly, there is this whole issue of Russian energy. India will continue its special partnership with Russia. India does not accept any third party, even if it is the most important superpower in the world, to dictate to us on our relations with Russia, which are time-tested, and the Russians, previously the USSR, have stood by India in all its critical moments from the time we've had problems. So I expect a very satisfactory outcome. And at the same time, let us not forget that our External Affairs Minister has been India's ambassador to Washington, a very successful ambassador. He has excellent ties with key persons in the Trump administration, and therefore he is very well positioned to be able to guide India through these troubled times, when on one hand we have the seemingly unending Russia-Ukraine conflict, and on the other, the seemingly unending US-Iran conflict. So I think, and in between lies the whole issue of India having access to energy reserves, which India can utilize in order to push its GDP and drive its 1.4 billion people to prosperity and what we call Vikas Bharat by 2047. So
All right, let me also, in fact, quickly now bring in Georgie Toloroya for a perspective from Russia. Georgie Toloroya, how much anticipation is there from the Russian side for this visit of the foreign minister? How crucial is this India-Russia partnership right now? What all do you believe will be on the table when the foreign minister is in Russia? And also, this crucial dialogue, this crucial session which the Foreign Minister of India will be chairing, which concentrates on trade, economic cooperation, scientific, technological and cultural cooperation as well. How crucial do you hope this dialogue will be?
The visit of the Minister Jaishankar, who is well known and respected in Russia, is centered on the meeting of the Intergovernmental Trade and Economic Commission. This is an important body, but this is a routine meeting, so they'll discuss a lot of issues for the future. But this is no sensation because the cooperation with India is very wide, beneficial to both parties. Of course, it's causing some concern, for example, in the US, when we speak about the supply of oil from Russia to India. But this is the issues which we can solve together without any interference. But I think more important is the context, because just 2 weeks from now, after this, Putin is supposed to take part in the BRICS meeting, BRICS summit in India, as far as I know. And so that would be a meeting of the world leaders where I'm not sure, I don't have the information, but maybe Xi Jinping will also be there. So there could be a meeting of the 3 global leaders of the non-Western countries, which can determine the world development for some time to come. And it's very important, of course, for such a respected diplomat as Jaishankar to check the positions of the Russians of our country, to discuss not only bilateral cooperation but more global issues, including the global logistics, the global energy market, the new BRICS development goals, and also the issues of war and peace all over the world, including Middle East and other places. So this visit is far from ordinary, and I think it will be very important as a step towards a more important high-level summit meetings.
Okay. Let me also ask you, Professor Tollerai, about the fact that, as you said, it's very important, of course, as it lays the groundwork for that upcoming visit by President Putin to India for the BRICS summit, but also now on the issue of trade. We've seen a very strong economic partnership between India and Russia, and we've not let the posturing by the US or the Europeans affect that at all, through the last 3-4 years either. In that context as well, how do you see this dialogue and discussion on trade ties, economic partnership, which also includes energy cooperation too, might I add?
Yes, well, in fact, India and Russia cooperation, of course, we have some problems, but still it shows the new model of cooperation. For example, we almost use no dollars in our financial settlements. It's mostly rupees. And of course, we've got some problems with that, with the using of these rupees for imports from India. And this is one of the issues which should be discussed. But we still have very wide military technical cooperation and especially energy cooperation. Despite the efforts of our European enemies, this cooperation goes on, and it's beneficial and useful for both parties. So I foresee another step in this direction, just developing on the success we had accrued in the past.
Yes, indeed. Also, Professor Tollerai, the Northern Sea route as well, using that perhaps more for our trading purposes. How important is that? We've seen a lot of turbulence in the maritime domain, not just for our countries, but for the entire world. How crucial will this Northern Sea route then be for trade?
Well, it is now in the aim of Russia is to develop it under its jurisdiction and to have as many ships going through this route as possible. We had the Chinese container ship a couple of days ago, which passed the ship. Today, I think the South Korean container ship has left the port in South Korea to go via Northern Sea route to London, to England, and to Rotterdam. And of course, this is the new activity in this area, which is beneficial for all the parties which will take part, India included. And especially, it wouldn't have been this important if it were not for the war in the Middle East, which already has closed the Strait of Hormuz and can easily, in fact, anytime close the Suez Canal. So this is a very welcome and important alternative. And of course, the country should be prepared for such an emergency, but not only that. Even if the business through the southern routes will be normal, still northern route may be more commercially viable and more faster and more profitable. So this is a new development of business, which is important.
Yes, indeed. Also the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. We need to focus more on that too, Professor Tolaroy.
Yes, Chennai-Vladivostok, yes. That's what I was talking about, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And a final question, because I know you have to leave us. What do you hope will be the outcome of this visit by Jaishankar to Russia, and then, of course, followed by the Putin-India visit?
I can't hear you right, but I understand that, of course, we'll have some document or some kind of agreements reached on the Intergovernmental Commission, and other results may be not visible in the short run, but we will know about what have been agreed when we have summit meeting, when we'll see the outcome of the future contacts, and maybe new contracts and new developments.
Okay. Also, this balancing act, how precarious has it been for India, with the US tariff sanctions on Russian energy and oil? How has it been this balancing act of India, balancing our relationship with also, of course,
we might not know immediately.
reducing complete dependency on Russian oil and energy? What is the Russian viewpoint on that?
I cannot hear you right, but I understand that you've been talking about the tariffs,
yes.
US
yes.
tariffs, and your efforts to undermine the Russian-Indian cooperation.
Yeah.
And of course, India is a grown-up country, who can decide by itself without any intermission about any meddling of others. And since it's very profitable to India, we sell it at a huge discount. I think it's good for the Indian economy and for the people. So it should go on.
All right, Professor Georgi Tolaroy, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this big story. Professor Madhav Nalapat, let me quickly rope you in here as well on what you, of course, anticipate to be the main points on the agenda of S Jaishankar as he embarks on this visit to Russia. Also, this this balancing act that we've seen of India for our relationship with Russia, and how it has continued to be very, very strong and robust despite the rough weather that the US has tried to create.
Well, I'd like to say that NewsX carried a very good report on Sergey Gore, the US ambassador to Delhi, saying very clearly that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India.
Absolutely.
When naturally our friends across the border were very upset about that. So I don't think the India-US partnership is in much danger. Sergey Gore made that statement when he knows full well the close relationship between India and Russia. So I just want to say, I'm not very hopeful about if there's any effort going to be on peace in Ukraine. I don't see peace in Ukraine so long as the present leadership of Ukraine is in charge and refusing to hold elections. I think the only way out will be a free election in Ukraine, so Ukrainians can select a government which they feel best represent their interests. I'm not sure Zelensky does that. I'm almost certain he's not going to agree to a fresh election because of the war. So he will keep the war going to keep elections off and to keep himself in power. As far as Iran is concerned, well, India has got its own relationship with Iran. Hopefully we can use those ties for ensuring that we get a less restrictive way of having Indian vessels from the Middle East coming to India. As of now, we are facing some problems. Our Iranian friends ought to be able to work around those problems if we discuss matters with them. Again, there I'm not sure how Russia will fit in. Now, the point today is you will have a prepared statement, you will have conferences, a lot of the conferences will be carried live, but what is so important about the visit, maybe what is not mentioned at all, and that could possibly be a series of messages between the top leadership of Moscow and the top leadership in Delhi. What those messages are, you and I will not know. I don't think anyone is going to know except a handful. But in Sergei Lavrov and Jaishankar are two of the most experienced and able foreign ministers in the whole world. Lavrov and Jaishankar both have been in the foreign service for a very long time. They are very experienced and they will be having a lot to discuss. So I presume that there will be something on the agenda which is basically off the public agenda. And that I think is going to happen. As far as Russia is concerned, yes, you're right. We have always had very good relations with Russia. Not as good, I may point out, as you had with the Soviet Union, but certainly a good relationship. And a country that occupies half the land area of Europe and half the land area of Asia is not a country that can be ignored in any way. And India has been very forthright in saying that we are not going to ignore the Russians in any way. I'm not sure if we can have this Chennai Vladivostok corridor made operational as soon as possible. I'm not sure how, but we do need energy, cheap energy desperately, because the rising price of energy are having a very harmful effect on the public morale and frankly harmful effect on several fronts, including the political, the social, etc. So there again, the Russians have got ample energy. The question is reaching India. And I think that question also likely to be discussed. But we got very strong defense ties. Those ties are continuing. They're not going to stop anywhere anytime soon. But Uday, I again want to say that the fact that these two people are meeting, possibly he may have a meeting with President Putin also. Well, I think the private discussions will have a lot on the agenda. But don't forget, India and Russia and the past India and the Soviet Union have been friends an uninterrupted period at a time when, frankly, our friend, a neighbor to the east was very hostile to Russia. That during the Soviet days, India stood by Russia. In fact, we signed a cooperative treatment of peace with Russia, and that was very helpful in the Bangladesh war. That treaty was masterminded by our ambassador to Russia, and that ambassador was none else than DP Dhar. So we have a long relationship with Russia. We have a long relation with Russian people, and the Russian people have shown time and time again that they are very resilient. They lost so much of their country during the Second World War. It was horrific. Millions of people dying, millions and millions. But still, they were able to prevail in the end. And finally, it is the Soviet armies that ensured that the back of the Nazi military might was broken. So I think the world owes a lot to the Russian people. And so far as the Indians and the Russian people are concerned, Russians who come to India, Indians who go to Russia, they are met with a very friendly reception. I have personally experienced that. I have experienced, my wife has experienced the very friendly relationship that the Russians have for we in India, and likewise.
And obviously we've balanced it out pretty well. We balanced it out pretty well despite these, the as I said, the tariff threats and all earlier. How do you see the energy cooperation, though, going forward, Professor Nalapat, as far as Russian oil and energy are concerned?
Look, the fact is that thing has gone forward irrespective of any of these tariffs. Secondly, the Supreme Court of the United States has been very, very strong in ensuring that the most egregious tariffs have been struck down. Federal courts are also active. We have very active Indian American community in the United States. I think they are now possibly crossing 5 million. and in a country where votes are basically, in the large population centers, which send a lot of representatives to the U.S. House of Congress, the Indian American vote and the Indian American fundraising are very important issues. So there are so many issues that unite India and the United States, and therefore we can agree to disagree on some issues. And I think Russia will be one of those issues that we agree to disagree. But I may remind you, Uday, in the beginning of his term, President Trump was proposing a friendly relationship between the US and Russia. In my view, that was a correct point of view. I don't know where he changed his mind, but I think ultimately the reality is it is more in the Russian interest, more in the US interest, and certainly in India's interest that India, the US, and Russia work more closely together. Thank you, Uday.
All right. Let me draw you in here now, Raymond Vickery, as well, on, of course, a perspective from the United States of America on this Russian visit by the Foreign Minister of India. How are you viewing this cooperation between India and Russia continuing, despite, of course, the US threats that we've been hearing as well, and some of the other panelists have referred to? And also, what have you been hearing about the US viewpoint on how US and Russia ties are progressing?
Well, thanks very much for having me and allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that a focus of this meeting in Moscow is going to be on commercial ties. The reality is that there is very little trade between Russia and the United States if you strip out oil. Oil has been a big factor since 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine and offered oil at discount prices. But if you strip out that, the trade between the two countries is very small. India only exports between $4 and $5 billion worth of goods to Russia every year. And the exports from Russia, absent oil and absent defense products, is almost nothing. So I think that there will be a focus on that. It seems to me that there is an understanding in the United States that India is going to have relations with Russia, just as it had with Soviet Union, as a matter really of national pride as much as advantage to India. The strategic autonomy, which is a bedrock, the ability to say that we are not controlled or unduly influenced by anybody in the West is a political reality in India. And I think that is understood. However, it should be remembered that the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s, about the same time that India ran out of foreign exchange and had to open up the license Raj economy. It should be remembered that when China invaded India in 1962, Russia stood aside, whereas the U.S. did come to the assistance of India at that point. The real question, though, is not one of whether or not India is going to be pro-Russia or pro-U.S. or pro-West. The real question for India, it seems, is whether or not principles of democracy, of non-use of force, of respect for international boundaries such as Ukraine will be a part of Indian foreign policy. I do not expect much change in that regard, and so I don't expect there's going to be very much said about Ukraine or even how to bring peace in Western Asia. it seems to me, a missed opportunity for India. India has excellent relations in Russia. It has excellent relations at this point with the West. And can serve as a bridge and an ameliorating factor to try to help bring peace and the drive for prosperity in the world. Unfortunately, I do not see India really taking the initiative in that regard. It seems to me that the focus is more narrow on self-interest at this immediate time and what can be derived from relationships as opposed to any sort of overall view as to what
Okay, let's
ought
get a
to
response
happen.
to what you just said from Ambassador Mukherjee as well. And I'll come back to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring to the attention of our distinguished guests from the United States that in 1962, the United States did not come to India's assistance, although the impression had been created earlier to the Indian government at that time, under Prime Minister Nehru, that the US was there to provide India with an umbrella against Chinese aggression. So the question of India depending on US is a very sore topic. Within India in 1962, we have never forgotten that experience. On the contrary, in 1971, when Kissinger decided with Nixon to send the 7th Fleet to the Indian Ocean to bombard Kolkata because they did not want any change in the status quo of Pakistan, it was Russia who said "Niet" 11 times to veto the anti-Indian resolution brought in by the then hostile Nixon administration, which enabled the liberation of Bangladesh under the Mukti Bahini assisted by India. Secondly, I would like to point out that after these two experiences, as far as India is concerned, it is very well aware that in the case of any future attack, either by China or by Pakistan, or the two acting in concert, India is alone in facing these adversarial challenges. And under those circumstances, will decide according to its core national interests what it should do. It's a very transactional approach to foreign policy, which should sound very familiar to the United States under Trump 2.0, because Trump 2.0 believes in transactional policies towards its allies, its enemies, or its friends. Thank you.
Now, also, Raymond Vickery, we have seen, of course, how the US has been waiving these sanctions on Russian oil and, and of course, putting them off for now, obviously, which suits its purpose because they didn't want the oil market getting further spooked because of the war, which anyways was spooked because of the war in the Middle East, started by the US and Israel. But do you see those sanctions coming back anytime soon?
At this point, I don't see those sanctions coming back immediately. But the question really is whether or not the West is going to get its act together in regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is the worst violation of the principles of the United Nations of non-aggression since World War II. The question, of course, is very much complicated by this ridiculous war of choice which the Trump administration has entered on, which, by the way, is extremely unpopular in the United States. About 70% of the electorate is against it. But at some point, it may be the case that a strategy with partnership and with principles may be arrived at, principally under the leadership of the democracies, not of the United States, but of Western Europe. In that case, it seems to me that the question of oil from Russia will come back to the table. And there is no question that India has been a chief prop of Russia in terms of its economy by taking up the gap in purchases of Russian oil. In that case, it seems to me that there would be a relook at the question of that prop which India, along with China, are providing for Russia. And I do not expect that to happen immediately. As has been perhaps pointed out, the Trump administration really does not have a strategy in regard to Ukraine and Russia. It really depends on what side of the bed Trump gets up on these days.
Okay. All right. We've run out of time. I'm going to have to leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion. Let's slip into a short break.